Hello, Jason.
Hey Garth, it's good to see you.
And you, sir. I am excited about this episode.
As am I. That was a episode 2 in this series was unbelievable. Bart was a great guest, as all our guests have been to date, and there's so much to unpack here.
There is, but before we jump in this episode, we handle a very controversial question when it comes to Ted Lasso fans. Was he a great person or a great leader? So, Jason, what comes to mind? What's one of your favorite Ted Lasso moments where Ted is being a great leader?
Ted is a great leader throughout the episodes. However, I think that Ted shows amazing leadership in supporting Roy Kent as he moves
There it
through
is.
his life transitions, right? It takes a special person to mentor somebody like Roy Kent to a place where Roy Kent ends up. And if there wasn't that leadership, there wouldn't be the sustainability inside the organization. And I think, you take it to a macro level. It was a million small actions that allowed Roy Kent to become the leader he became. And that is the work of Ted Lasso. What about you? I'm super curious.
For me, it crystallizes his approach, it crystallizes leadership when he gives Jamie Tart the little army figurine. I love that moment. And so in this episode, we debrief about our conversation with Bart. We talk about prepare what it means to be prepared as an effective communicator, as a leader who is an effective communicator, but also on the topic of effective communication. Jason and I are speaking across oceans. I'm in South Africa right now. He's in Calgary. So if this is a little choppy, listeners, please forgive us. But the irony is not lost on us. So enjoy the
Absolutely.
episode, everybody.
Enjoy the show.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right in. Breaking down Ted's world, let's begin. From AFC, Richmond's Field to your day-to-day. Lassoing Leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the Lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow.
Welcome to another episode of Lassoing Leadership. I'm Jason Rogers, and as always, I'm joined by my incredible co-host, Garth Nichols.
Hey, everybody. Today's episode is a big one for us because we're reflecting on our recent interview with Bart Eggnall. And if you haven't listened to that conversation yet, be sure to tune in because we're going to be riffing off of that a little bit, and he has some gems in there.
No doubt. But before we get too far into it, Garth, this is our first cross-Atlantic podcast. I'm happy to have you in a different location. Well, I'm not happy to have you in a different location. I want to tell our listeners where you're recording from. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently recording. This will be released on Tuesday, and right now it's the Wednesday before, and I'm in the country of South Africa, and I'm doing a bit of a tour around with my son to do a site inspection for a course and experience that I'm designing. And we just flew in from the center of the country. We just landed in Cape Town this evening, had a bit of dinner, and right now it's 9:40 my time, which means that it's 1:40 your
You
time,
got it,
Jason, in
Garth. It
Calgary.
is 1:40,
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter the time. I'm
yeah,
always grateful to be with you. So let's
I know.
get right into it.
Love it.
Bart brought so
Yeah.
much insight to what it means to lead with effective communication. I loved recording this podcast, and I loved listening to it back even more. He talked about how to inspire action, and
Yeah.
yes, he even weighed in on our ongoing debate: was Ted Lasso a great leader? Loved it.
Yeah, and we'll get into all that. Plus, we've got 2 listener questions to reflect on. So let's jump in.
So let's start with one of the biggest takeaways from our chat with Bart. He said that leadership isn't about a title, it's about inspiring others to act. That, Garth, hit home for me. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think if you and I have talked about this before, Jason, it is a great point. It's one that deserves to be reemphasized on this podcast because I think it's a signal of how we lead. But if you are in leadership for the title, you are not going to be successful. A title doesn't give you that informal, if you will, that informal power of connection and relationship. That formal power only lasts for so long. A title isn't going to sustain you when you're exhausted or tired or when you're having a bad day. And certainly if you choose to call on your title for authority, it I just can't think of an example of that where that ended well.
No.
What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I think the foundation of great leadership is relationships, and you build those relationships through connection, and you don't build those relationships through title and authority. And I think Bart hit that home as well. And I mean, I also love that he talks about preparation, that, communication isn't an innate or just natural skill that people have. It's something you need to practice, and you need to get used to communicating with purpose. And he went on to say, one of the quotes was, to be spontaneous, you have to be prepared. And I just love it. Actually reminds me of one of our
Mm,
earliest podcasts. Garth, remember what the title of that podcast was?
no,
No?
remind
It
me.
was the harder you work, the luckier you get. Right? So the more
Right.
prepared you
That
are, the
is
more
that is
spontaneous you can look. I think there's got to be a connection there.
I think so too. The way I took that up as well in terms of being prepared was really understanding your why, understanding the organization that you are representing, that you are stewarding, that you are leading. It always helps. You're constantly doing, like, for lack of a better term, Jason, you're just constantly doing your homework,
Mhm.
right? Whenever you connect with people, you're logging what those is important to you, the people in your organization, and you're logging how the organization is important to those people. If you are presenting in front of parents, you have to be prepared to understand their perspective, their point of view. And you mentioned this in a previous podcast too. Those are the types of preparation that you need. You don't need a written script. I don't believe in that. But what you do need is a really solid foundation of your why, who your audience is, and you got to have build on those relationships whenever you communicate.
And for those of you who
Yeah.
listen to the podcast, you know that Bart went from like philosophical to tactical. He had so many items in there
Mm,
which are rich takeaways. And one of the things I loved about the podcast was the three keys to great communication. Now, Bart shared three essential effective leadership tools for great communication. One is define the action you want to inspire. Two is to shape the beliefs of your audience. And three, move from information to inspiration. And I just loved
yeah.
that. It was so sharp.
Yeah, and it's tactical, which is great. And I think that last point is so important. Like, too often leaders focus on either too high level, right?
Mhm.
Or dumping information rather than connecting emotionally or connecting to their why. So it's really about how do we shift from just sharing facts to truly inspiring people.
To-
Jason, you speak to a whole host of different people. How do you inspire them? How do you make sure you're not just sharing facts?
Well, I think it's got to mean something to them. It comes back to, Tim and Bell we had on the podcast a long time ago now, and I'm
Mm,
so inspired by them. But you have to speak to the purpose of the organization, which comes right back to the values, the mission, to the vision. And I really think that if you are vision aligned, value aligned, and you're speaking about the purpose of those things, you can't help but hit a chord with the people who are with you. And if it doesn't hit a chord, then maybe it's not the right purpose aligned organization for them. So if you
mm,
lean into purpose, and education is so easy, Garth, because we're so lucky. We've got such a clear purpose across all education, whether it's public, charter, private, otherwise, is to support kids and reaching their potential and keeping them safe and knowing that they're cared for, loved, seen, valued, all those things. I think inspiring people comes easily if you keep those things in mind.
Jason, I love that. And I just want to go back to something you said, which was, if it doesn't resonate with them, maybe it's not the organization for them,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And every time you're communicating, you're sending a signal. This is either the direction we're going
Mm-hmm.
in. This is what it takes to be, part of this organization, to be successful in it. And so when you are communicating with people, you're giving off those signals as well. I think the other thing that's really that's important when you're talking about sharing facts versus inspiration is considering the space and the place. So many times it's like, can this be sent in an email? Is it appropriate for these
Mm-hmm.
facts to be sent in an email, or are these facts something that are going to influence or impact or inspire your audience? And so I think for those of you who are listening, consider your audience, consider the space and the facts. If it's better in an email, send it, and also follow up. Make sure people are reading it too.
Oh man, that solid tips there, Garth. That leads us to listener questions. Do you mind if I jump in and ask the first listener question?
Yeah, let's go.
So here it is, Garth. What's one example from your leadership experience where you had to shift from simply sharing information to inspiring action, and how did you do it?
Yeah, that's a that's a big one. I think, like, for me to answer that, um, in my role at my school, I'm constantly trying to inspire people
Mm-hmm.
to action, like come along with me on this journey of innovation or in global experience. And it's really interesting because sometimes faculty members, and they're not a monolith, but faculty members can sort of, there's a tension that's felt when we are trying to take like our students out of class, to do a global experience. And is that student ready? And I think one of the things I'm really proud of is that over the last 4 years, building a global experience program, we've really put the communication in the hands of the students in a lot of ways. They're presenting to the whole school, they're talking to their teachers about when they're leaving, why they're leaving, and then when they come back. And we have seen a marked increase in the number of faculty members who are willing and able and ready to go on a global experience with our students. I like to think that that's moving them from, just facts about why we do it into be a part of it. And the hard part for me, to be honest with you, Jason, is like saying saying thank you, because it's
Mm-hmm.
such a task
Mm-hmm.
to take time off your class, to take time out of your job, take time away from your family, to love and care and make sure that these students are safe on that trip and do all the logistics. And so that movement from those, like the logistical pieces, to inspiring people to go, I do put a lot of that on my students, but I'm really, really pleased with that. What about you, Jason?
Well, that's a really great example, Garth. When I think about this one, I think about 11 years ago when I came to be head here. The first thing I noticed of our schools, because we have several schools at that time, we had four distinct schools. Each of them had a value statement of their own. And we initially decided to set on getting one value statement for the whole school. So it was a lot of listening, a lot of fact finding, a lot of information at first. Why are these values in each of our schools? We had a list of about 30 of them. But then eventually we all came around the one value statement Rundle still has, which is together, be kind, be curious, be well. And that was the moment where we pivoted from
Mm,
gathering information, considering information, to inspiring them to really think about what does it mean to be kind. There's no playbook for kindness. So it was inspiring action inside each individual around that value statement. And so that was a time where it was
nice.
information gathering, really talking about the information. What are the values, the 20 odd values that we have, and how do we distill them? And then it was about inspiring action beyond that.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I think pulling people together, sharing getting them involved in the process. It's awesome. Okay, let's turn this to our listeners with a little thing here. We can't talk about leadership without bringing it back to Ted Lasso. So for our listeners, I want you to think about Ted Lasso when we're going through this. Now, Bart said something that was pretty controversial for us. He said that Ted was a great person, but not necessarily a great leader.
Yeah. I think for both of us, that one stung a little bit. Um,
Oof.
but I think some of
Yeah.
his reasoning it does make sense. You have to give him that. Ted was an incredible at building relationships. But the question I put back on you, Garth, and I think this is where it comes back to Bart's comments, was did he have a clear vision for success? Was that clear in his leadership?
Well, it was definitely clear with him and with Trent. He was always very clear about what he wanted to achieve. And it was never about traditional goals of a soccer team, of a football team. but I have to, upon further reflection, I have to agree. He has his moments, and one of the sometimes he just comes out with these like zingers, be curious, not judgmental. He has a gift for storytelling, and that is where I think he really succeeds as a great leader. He's too much in the background at some critical moments, but when he is a great leader, I think of that time where Colin he is
Mm-hmm.
coming out as
Mm-hmm.
gay to
Mm-hmm.
the team, and someone, I forget, a couple of the team members like, we don't care, we don't care, we don't care. And Ted comes back and says, wait, we do care. And he told this sort of bit of a rambling but long story about when he didn't care and what that meant to his grade school friend. And I think in those moments, he is trying to inculcate a culture. He is doing that through stories and his own experiences so that they can reflect on it. I think that is a very effective style for him. I think he could do better in some ways, but what about you, Jason? What do you think?
Listening to you and reflecting on Bart, I tend to disagree with Bart. I actually think Ted was a great leader, and I'll share why. I think he was a great leader because he did have a vision. He wanted to build great people, make people the best humans they can be. And as a result, they would have success, likely on the field. I think traditional leadership would have us saying, we need to win the cup or we need to win the championship. But he's focusing more,
Mhm.
like you said, on culture, on relationships, on humans. And the combined effort of those is greater than the sum of the parts. And that ultimately are victories on the playing field. And I think it takes a little bit of faith. I think it takes a little bit of audacity. And I think it comes back to that, kind of tagline we use from time and again. It's a kinder, more compassionate way to lead. And I think that is challenging to I don't know, to a typical construct of leadership in a lot of minds. And I think the other thing I want
But I think, but
is
I interrupt you there because there are some moments like where he introduces Danny Rojas. He doesn't tell the team his plan. He just turns it over to them. And for me, that's a bit too much of free range and hoping, as you say, faith, but hoping they get the message. And I think he could have done a lot better in terms of particularly supporting Jamie, particularly supporting Roy, and being more overt with his why and his plan and his vision. And I think that that's what Bart was getting at,
yeah,
and that certainly resonated with me too.
I think you're right on that. And to counter, I think what we see in these snippets of Ted Lasso as a leader is the truth about leadership is that nobody is perfect all of the
Mm,
time. Whereas,
yeah,
you might see an archetype, you see the very best of leaders when they write their memoir or you watch a movie about them. But what I loved about the Ted Lasso is that you see him in weak, vulnerable moments going through ups and downs and challenges and not being perfect. And I think that
yeah,
vulnerability is also equated to great leadership. So I think we can all agree to
yeah.
disagree slightly on this one, but I think there's
Well, yeah,
something
but I
there.
think the show is really special in that we see the arc of his character. I mean, we're with Ted for three years, non-TV years, right? We're
Mhm.
we're alongside him in 3 seasons. Like, it's really special in terms of watching his growth, and in that way, we have a lens to nitpick and interrogate what he's doing all the time. So, no, I appreciate that. All right, let's turn this to our listeners with one final reflection. Jason, you want to talk about our final reflection?
Okay, now we're going to turn this back to our listeners, and we want you to think about a leader you admire. You might want to journal, reflect with somebody you trust on this, and do they lean more towards being a great person or a great leader? And truly, what's the difference between a great
Mm,
person and a great leader? And I think it's just excellent food for thought. I think it gives a little bit of space to consider what leadership is all about. Garth, do you have any first thoughts
yeah.
if I was to put that to you?
Well, yeah, I do. It is a great question. And for those of us who can immediately think of a person who is equally as great a person as they are a leader, and I've got a couple people who come to mind, no names, just initials. Jason Rogers is one. But I think I would challenge our listeners to think, would they be a great leader for someone else in your organization? Because they might be a great leader for you and a great person for you, think about if there's a great leader for someone else in your organization too. Yeah. What about you, Jason?
No, I think that's a really great point, Garth, and I obviously think the same of you. But I think, I think you're right. I mean, I think you have to ask yourself, in situ or in context, does that, enhance their leadership? And in another situation, would they still be the same leader? But they'd still be a great person. So I think it's like, sometimes we talk about value congruence, but I also think it's like purpose congruence with organizations. And I think leaders have to have that. They've got to have purpose and value congruence to be truly a realized great leader inside an organization. And you can be a great person and not a great leader. And I'm sure you can be a great leader and not a great person. But I think it's really interesting when those two come together. I think it's probably magic.
Yeah, I often think about educators, right? There are great educators for certain students, and you can sit in the classroom and be like, that is my teacher, or that person is amazing. And the person next to you, who might be your best friend, is like, I can't stand that teacher. I hate this class.
Exactly.
So I think it's a very nuanced thing, but we'd love our listeners to do that exercise and let us know what you think.
Well, Garth,
All right, let's wrap it up,
yeah,
Jason.
that's a ton to think about today. Huge thanks to Bart for joining us. We hope you tune into
thank you, Bart.
his podcast and his resources as well. He is a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in too. Keep sending us your questions and your thoughts, because we do love hearing from you.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like it, leave a comment, subscribe, and share. It helps more people find this podcast and keep the conversation going. And until next time, Garth, why don't you bring us home?
I think we should do it together.
You want to try? Okay. Here we go.
On three. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Oh, no. This is a disaster. Okay. One more time.
Keep leading the last... Effective communication across the oceans. Until next time, listeners, keep leading the lasso way.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Step up to the mic. It's time to play. Lassoing leadership every day. From the pitch to the boardroom, lessons called to mind. Keep leading the lasso way. You'll find we've got heart, we've got soul, and humor too. Exploring how Ted shows what leaders should do. With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC Richmond's field to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn